So, sorry, no, you're not going to
Uh,
record yet.
oh,
Remember,
uh,
you're going to do your spiel first.
oh, okay. Let me do the spiel. Hold on.
I think so. Sorry, guys, we're working on this.
So thank you very much for joining us, YouTube. We are in the C4C Cardano4Climate Meetup for October 5th. And we have today a special guests, Travis Marsh and John Buck. They'll be leading us through a presentation and facilitation. I'd like to just hand it over to you to give you the full time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So I'm John Buck. Travis, if you could raise your hand or blink or something, it's about one of the co-authors of this thing that we'll present to you about other alternative ways to run DAOs. I don't see Bryan here. There you are, Bryan. Okay, great. Who's also a co-author. And so what I propose to do is to show just some quick slides. Look for comments from Travis or Bryan. In fact, interrupt me, Travis or Bryan, if I can be, if you have something to say. We'll end up with we'll go to comments by them, and hopefully within 15 minutes we'll be turning it over to everybody to be discussing things, and we have some suggestions for how you can use the breakout rooms. So hopefully the talking head will last only the minimum amount of time needed. And Travis, would you just say hi, and Bryan say hi, so that we can? I'll then start the slideshow.
Hello, everybody. Good to be here.
Hi there. I'm Bryan, as John introduced. Thanks.
Okay, great. All right, here we go. Sliding into the Slideshare. This is from an article that we all three wrote together. If you want to see the entire text of the article, there's a nice, easy to get to, tiny URL right there that lets you get to it. And I don't remember whether it's to the tweet that sends it out or to the actual article.
We got it in the chat already, John. No
Great.
worries.
Okie doke. Great. And so what's the article talk about? Why did it hop to that? That's the first question here. We have a problem. Okay. I've reduced what the article says to just a couple of slides to just give you a feel for it. It talks about the fact that DAOs are now currently making decisions by majority vote in a competitive atmosphere in the case of Cardano. And that's the little box down here below that says majority voting. There's actually many different forms of decision making that DAOs can be considering doing, and they don't have to do it by majority with all the problems that, with the whales coming in and all that kind of stuff that happens. And so the kind of the basis of all this is something called consent decision making, but things like generative decision making are like it's not consensus. And so actually a DAO should feel free to use all these different forms of decision making depending upon what it wants to do. And forming a community bottom-up DAO needs to be aware of all these different choices on decision making. The ones that are probably the most useful, like consent, majority vote, consensus, generative decision making, all need some sort of a facilitation skill or a facilitator, which you all have. You've been doing lots of organizing with being led by facilitators. This idea of forming bottom up is not just something that DAOs should be worried about. It's a lot of different places around the world. This thing here in Marathi is about a huge system in the state of Kerala, where they have a couple of levels of bottom-up governance. There's neighborhoods are organized. They elect representative to the next level and elect representatives to the next level above that, something called the Panchayat area. Sonic is sociocracy in neighborhood communities. It's a big study that they've just getting their paper out now about their study that is literally trying to see, can we imitate the Kerala system in Europe? They've got 9 countries involved. And so it's like, it's not the idea of DAOs forming bottom up is not an isolated idea. There's some papers I can give you where they're experimenting at some in Holland. The picture down here is of the catalyst circle, which unfortunately, and I won't go into a lot of the detail on it, the original idea of the catalyst circle was to provide a way for the community to organize itself, and it got changed into a human sensor array or something, which is ridiculous, and it's unfortunate that it has not served that original function, and so maybe it can be rescued, maybe not. One other thing over here on the right-hand side is these pictures of what's happening in Brojava, which is in the northeast corner of Syria. They are literally organized bottom up. Turkey doesn't like them. Iran doesn't like them. Syria doesn't like them. But in northeast Syria, there's this little pocket where they have organized things like the police force in the Brojava area. People take turns being police, ordered from the bottom up. This picture of 2 women here with rifles. The women are completely equal in their voices here. ISIS tried to come in there. The women's brigade that has no male officers beat them and chased them off. And they have tremendous influence in this bottom-up system that they're using. You'll notice in the newspapers in the last few days, there's been a lot of demonstrations in Iran, particularly northern Iran, which is right next to Brojava. And so they are organized well enough that they're causing lots of trouble. Turkey has been sending in drones and trying to kill some of the leaders with drone strikes, but they're very solid. And so if they can do it, so can a DAO. And that's kind of the summary of these pictures. And the conclusion of the article is that DAO communities need to organize themselves, and particularly the Cardano community needs to be organizing itself. Right now, the situation is that there's a no cooperative system. There's a competitive system. You just went through a process where 2,000 people wasted their time preparing competitive proposals that, right now, maybe there's a way to save it, but it's all gone to waste. There's a few people that were selected. It doesn't have to be that way. If you can use consent of everyone, you can promote collaboration, you can minimize or eliminate majority voting, and you don't have to be caught up in the catalyst system. There may be many alternatives to use the work that you've done to go do other things. Catalyst is not the community. Cardano is providing a very useful tool that's environmentally friendly to be able to take the initiatives that so many people seem to be passionate about. We recommend that you proceed forward in doing that by a series of what I call Agile Sprints. There's a book that I wrote just a couple of years ago, and it jumped away to that and didn't want it to go like that. Okay, there it goes. Back again. Called Company-Wide Agility with Beyond Budgeting, Open Space, and Sociocracy. And it says in the last third of the book, the way you proceed to do things like this DAO organizing the bottom up and so forth is to create sprints. Everybody knows what sprints are, but they're used to doing them only in the context of software. You can do them like a sprint on permaculture, asking the question, is it feasible to take the proposals, this is one example, take the proposals already prepared for Fund 9 that were turned down and go find a foundation to fund them. That would be a sprint. The first sprint would be, is it feasible to do that? and come up, and I'll explain a little bit more about it in a minute. Or there could be a sprint looking at, can we collaborate, form a collaboration system with all these initiatives that were put forward that were competing with each other into something that can prepare the next Catalyst challenge by just one proposal coming up that's coordinated among everybody in a particular challenge. Is it possible in the upcoming Catalyst Fund 10 to create that same kind of cooperative spirit between the tech part of the community and the whales and the community, to say, let's come up with something that we develop in a cooperation so that we're not fighting against each other and everybody wasting their time. It's, as Nori said, it's kind of like the difference between having a system that goes on proof of work versus proof of stake. The proof of stake, you're not wasting a lot of effort. So that's the conclusion of the article, or the implied conclusion of the article. And I want to go off of screen sharing and go back onto some specific, specific advice about how you do a sprint. This has Korean in it because I just got back from Korea last week teaching this idea of how you do sprints, and I didn't try to take the Korean out of the slides. And so I would like to hear any other comments from Travis and Bryan, and then go back into screen sharing to just describe a little bit about how you might do the sprints and then go into discussion. So Travis, any supplemental thoughts about this?
Yeah, just putting it in context, and you've got a lot more depth of knowledge for the Cardano4Climate community, but deciding how to decide is one of the most critical decisions. And when you're coming under the DAO umbrella, you've obviously taken an opinion that the way that previous organizations were structured wasn't working. So typically those are hippo sort of decisions where it's the highest paid person's opinion rules the roost. And said, great, there must be another way. And then default path to go with majority voting is fine, but every decision-making paradigm has pros and cons with it. So when you have the highest paid person opinion, you can move very fast. If you've got somebody that's smart and benevolent, then you've got like a benevolent dictatorship. And if there's enough of those competing, great things can happen. That's why we're all here on a Zoom call. Magic happens when the other world is trying to do that sort of thing. Group decisions are wonderful for collaboration, but can be overtaken by people with extra tokens and weight on there. And there's a set of forms of decision that are widely used from people in their lives, but are widely unused across organizations. And moving that natural knowing that we have into other forms of organizations, especially ones that are well aligned, like DAOs, made a whole bunch of sense. It seemed like a marriage that's just been waiting to happen. And so these consent forms of decision making is how we structure most things in most parts of our lives. So why not do it when we're trying to change the world to be more human-centered and human-focused?
Thanks, Travis. Bryan, any comments to add?
Yeah, and I think so the lens that I brought as a co-instigator of this paper is sort of more as a DAO ethnographer. I like to immersively learn from within DAOs, in addition to having been previously fascinated by some of the literature and communities surrounding self-organizing, be it tealocracy, sociocracy, etc. But over the last year of immersively hanging out in DAOs, one thing I've noticed is that it's kind of a bit of a what got you here won't get you there moment for DAOs. And so one thing that I've noticed is that token weighted governance is a great way to catalyze the pooling of energy and then the spawning of structure from that energy quickly and efficiently. It's an imperfect tool, as John and Travis have highlighted, but it might be fit for purpose in terms of getting started, or it has done a good job of getting community started that previously struggled to catalyze. And I think one of the challenges is that once you've spawned structure, you have energy available now that we're underutilizing by leaning into this particular decision-making paradigm, and continuing it on. Once we've spawned structure, there's an opportunity to harness the energy through these bottom-up, mechanisms by basically realizing that now the context is no longer at the core, it's at the edges. And in order to harvest that energy in that context, we need to almost create bottom-up governance roll-ups to bring that context back to the core and vice versa. And not to mention all the typical criticisms that are out there. But I think it's, the typical criticisms actually divert focus from the lost energy and the lost opportunity, because they're more about whale capture, vulnerabilities of token-weighted governance, inefficiencies of majority vote, without asking pointing energy towards, okay, where have we propagated energy that we are not harnessing? And what mechanisms and designs and decision-making paradigms do we need to experiment with to start to include it in the mix, and get more of a symbiotic bottom-up, tops-down thing happening, or too top-down. But it was awesome. It was great. It's just not great anymore.
Thanks. I see there's lots of comments in the chat. Before we go to those comments, I would like to just introduce the idea of sprints as a way of proceeding forward to create a cooperative community, to explore these ideas, to explore possibilities, and then we'll go to chat. So let me go back onto screen share. There's a lot more to be said about all this, but I think that the basic ideas will be very familiar to you if you think about the experience you've had with Agile. So this all relates to complexity theory. If you are familiar with Cynefin and so forth, they say if you have a complex situation, you have to probe it. You can't logically think it through. You just have to find out what's happening and see what's possible. And I have found that to be very true, that the way to approach it is probes. I have a habit now of having my own personal probes in our business, and it's work, and there's a discipline involved in getting things written out, but it really seems to pay off. So this is the cycle. It starts out with reflecting on your organization, and there's a concept in there from complexity theory that's called reflexive inquiry, which means thinking about how you're thinking. So when I was talking with Melanie yesterday, she was saying, oh, we've been thinking about just Catalyst as the community, but what if that's not true? What if it's the community's there and we don't have to mess with Catalyst, it's Cardano is the tool we want. And that's an example of transformative thinking, of changing your framework. And so a probe needs to start with that kind of thinking. What happens if we do something differently? In Agile, after you have a sprint, you have a retrospective. Same thing, more or less, only the Agile doesn't really get you into kind of the deep thinking that you can be encouraged to do out of a probe, and it tends to say, all right, what do we do differently next time? Which is fine, but you can think even deeper than that. It's the same process, however. What you try to come up with out of that is a question. And you say, okay, well, what happens if we don't try to go through Catalyst, but we go through something else? That then leads you to a hypothesis. The hypothesis is if we approach a foundation, given the materials that we prepared, we will get an expression of interest. True or not? Hypothesis. We will. We have 2 weeks to do that, and do we come back and get that? If we get an expression of interest, then we say, okay, next sprint is we're going to modify the stuff to meet the needs of the foundation, and we'll get a positive response. And you proceed that way. So designing probes, designing the experiment that you're going to do is all of this part of your thinking. It's great if you write it down so you can share it with people. You do the experiment. Out of that, you'll get like, oh, we made some assumptions there we didn't think about. Maybe we need to look at that. That people are used to. That's the agile cycle. And rather than it being an experiment, you spend 2 weeks, preparing software, and then you say, well, how did that go? What agile doesn't tend to push people into doing is publishing it to peers, being good scientists and saying, okay, we did this, this was the results, and now we need to let people know. We'll write it up so that they can try it if it seemed to work, or they can say, we'll try it this way. We get feedback to do further reflection. That's the basic cycle. So a probe, again, is a small, safe-to-fail experiment based on a hypothesis derived from reflection on the current situation as well as on theory. So that's like, okay, you can carry that to the academics and you get a grade A if you tell them that. So it's just the definition of what is it you're trying to do. Then it's another way of summarizing that cycle I just showed you. So what's the format of a probe? You start out with a question that summarizes your hypothesis. I gave you an example. It should be the result of reflecting about your situation, which you're doing right now out of these results out of Fund 9. And then you come up with a hypothesis. And I gave an example of that. Okay, if we try going to a foundation, we will get this kind of response. And there are many other sorts of things that you can be asking, different experiments that you might want to try. And then you do the experiment, and that's the probe. That doesn't include the thought about the publication, but you go ahead and try the experiment. That's the probe. And so what I would like to do is have us now ask any questions you want of Travis, Bryan, and me about what's this concept about the DAO organizing itself from the bottom up and choosing its decision making, but then talk about possible probes that you might organize and do. In preparation for maybe organizing groups that try these probes in your breakout rooms. And that's the thought I had. Who knows where the discussion will go, but that's the end of the slides. And let's see if anybody has any reflections, thoughts, questions about what we've presented at this point.
There was one request for the slides, and Nori's got his hand raised.
Okay.
That's to Shakan.
Go ahead, Nori.
All right. Thanks for the presentation. I think this is really timely, and there's a lot of people here who are diving deeply into these kind of topics and figuring out how do we organize, how do we do stuff. There's been a lot of passion around the so-called teal organizations and how we do that. And I love the conversations around the consent process. So my question, I wanted to go back to the slide where you show consent and then advice and the generative and then the list of different approaches. And you mentioned that like there's no one right thing per, you don't want to use one tool or the hammer for every possible thing. And you put a range of different options there, from chaos, magic, orders, majority, consensus. I'm just looking at the paper so I can run all those off.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, just looking at the advice versus the narrative, we've been talking a little bit about the advice process as kind of a fundamental tool so that we're able to push decisions as far to the edge as possible. And then people who know who their decisions are going to impact, they seek advice from those stakeholders so that they can get enough input to make a decision. But that advice isn't like, they don't have to water down their decisions or take everybody's kind of viewpoints and incorporate it. It's more just a consultative kind of making sure that everyone's heard so you can take their opinions into the decision making. But that versus the facilitated consent mechanisms, I was wondering, like, yeah, where do you do the more heavyweight? Oh, we need a facilitator. We need to make sure everyone is included, and that we expand and do the yes and include their opinions in, so that we get to this kind of consent place where everyone is okay with the decision. They might not love it, but they're comfortable. Or I guess the other analogy is it's above the waterline. It's not going to sink the boat because it's below
Right.
it. How do you
One
separate those two, and when do you engage with the more heavyweight stuff?
one cycle, if that's how you're choosing to organize, is you kind of go like Spotify or whatever. You use what's called organizational open space, where if you're led to do something, you're bounded by responsibility, you take initiative, just do it. You can get a lot of like on a sprint. A sprint is a kind of a thing like that. We've got these 10 people. We're gonna go try something out, and probe something. Just do it. So the reason it's between chaos and magic is that chaos is kind of like the conditions you need to self-organize, where there's just no structure at all. Things come together. Particularly as long as everybody has a general mission or thing you're trying to do, it'll self-organize. There's another point of view, which is that, if we get together every month and just have a time to think, then we can, if we're using consent, we can say, this is not working to do this and this, or we have an opportunity we're missing over here to do this and this. Can everybody live with this? Is it good enough for now, safe enough to try, or do we need to make some adjustments? You're over there using the advice process to do this, but why don't you get together with this group? Or why are you doing this? It's causing trouble. We need you to change. And so you can go in a nice rhythm between people just doing stuff, and then everybody sitting down together and saying, is this what we need? Can we all consent to this? Can we live with it? We've got competing ideas. How do we say yes to these competing ideas rather than having a fight between them and voting on them? Well, how do we say yes to them both? And that's that kind of generative thinking, saying, can we all live with this? Is looking at the whole system and saying, is the system working okay? Do we need to make an adjustment? That's over there on the facilitative side. And so you can get into a nice rhythm between the two if you want.
Could I give a quick yes and to what you're sharing, John? I
Sure,
think
please.
one of the things that I would advise, you're getting steeped into the theory of Thiel, holacracy, sociocracy. I'm catching the language already in our dialogue here. And I think language is actually, a shared language is half the battle, because it's messy once you get on the playing field. And so when you have a shared language, you're able to produce dialogue that allows you to sense and move between these zones. You'll often start in a zone of chaos, magic, advice, and you're trying to get someone's advice, and you will start to feel like blocked. And what you're ending up in that spot is you're having to use the shared language model from my experiences to say, okay, is this above the waterline or below the line? By having that shared language, we immediately are determining whether the blocker that exists here is worthy of graduating from the advice process to the generative domain, for example. And so you have that shared language, shared model, and you're simply using it then to start to have a dynamic conversation of navigating it together, because, you are actually having to, it's similar to we need to decide how to decide. This is actually doing it dynamically, and the shared language is your defense to being able to do it dynamically, because otherwise you can get stuck and more emotional in nature, as is natural when we're trying to make decisions where we think it's above the waterline and somebody else thinks it's below, and we can't even have that dialogue. So that's the only thing I'd point out, is like, it's messy, and the shared model is the most important part to get started playing the game.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks. Nori, did that meet your concern?
Yeah, it was more expanding on the topic and kind of getting a little more detail on some of the mechanics of it. So that was really great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was well said. Thanks. More reflections, questions.
We have one more question, but it's not from Shakan.
Yeah. Hey, Harsha, what do you?
So I had a quick question about the first slide again. In your personal experience, do specific kinds of actions or does specific kinds of work work better with some of the zones rather than the others?
Let me repeat back the question so I'm sure I got it. Um, I think you're referring to this chart, and I think you're asking, do some of these work better than others?
In specific situations, like say for example, people are organizing to clean a beach. Maybe some of these consent mechanisms work better, and maybe someone's developing an app, and in that case, maybe some of the other consent mechanisms work better.
Right.
Yeah.
The if I'm organizing to clean a beach, before we get out to the beach, I probably want to have a discussion over here, a facilitated discussion. What's our plans? What times do we do it? Where, is somebody going to bring the bags? All that kind of organizing stuff. Are we okay with working for 5 hours? So you get the general parameters. And then you go over here to orders and say, we need somebody who's in charge of the whole thing that can shift resources around, tell people what to do. So let's go to an orders type thing. And we like George. George, you be the one in charge for the day, and we'll take your direction. So we don't want to be making consent decisions or consensus or anything else. We need clear direction, accountability, all that kind of thing. That comes out of like having a boss. So we elect a boss. Okay, go. So that would be how I would clean the beach.
Makes sense.
Then I would have a gathering after that, a party that night, and say, woo, we have a clean beach. How did that go? Well, George, you were good in here, but when you did this, we were pissed off at you. So when we do that again, we don't want that. Or, hey, we needed to do more of this. And so you have another reflection time for maybe where you go up and clean up the park. Does that
it makes sense? Yes.
Okay. Good.
Things definitely happen in cycles, don't they? From one to the other. Moving forward, we have Cardano Summit coming up middle of November, and community is impact with Cardano. I'm just wondering how we could maybe do a sprint along those lines, because you had some subjects there to take us into sprints. John, what do you think?
Yeah, and those subjects were coming from you and Nori when we were talking yesterday, because it was like that I had given a draft of this presentation a few days ago, and you were going kind of like, that's not it, and we got together with you and Nori, and that's what we came up with. So, and you guys I was impressed by all the ideas you all had. I was the one that had the contract with IOHK to put the Catalyst Circle together, and there was some big political problems internally to them, and unfortunately that's got shoved aside, and that's the last I've touched it. Like, it's been several months since I've touched the whole system, so I'm not as familiar with what's going on. So I think that it would be great if we could be talking about, well, what are some ideas, what are some things we could probe and maybe say, could we do this differently or what?
Awesome. Shikan. Do we have 2 Shikans? Because that would be awesome. I think double you would be great.
Harsh has renamed himself back to
I see we have Bruno has a hand up.
Shikan first, the real Shikan.
So my question, I think, may help us out with the breakout rooms as well, because I'm trying to understand how to look at sprints. Are they just a tool to get things started and get things going, or are they a tool that we can keep coming back to even as we are progressing in projects? Because as I'm hearing the how you use sprints within different ideas, it just seems like different starting off projects, it seems like. But is it just that spark, or does it help us out throughout the process?
If we look at Agile and how Agile works, Agile enables you to produce whole systems of software. And you do it repeatedly. We got the first screen here. This is how you log in. The customer doesn't like it. Whoopee. We learned that quickly. Now we do this, and now we go to the next thing. And so it's helpful to be guided by an epic. This is the general direction we're headed, and so that you have an overall plan. But the software folks have proven that you can produce whole systems with it, and you just keep repeating the cycle as you're going. and you don't have to be doing just software development. It's a generalized idea that the agile software people haven't particularly articulated well about how does this generalize. And so that's what one of the things that we've been trying to do is like generalizing how do you do a whole effort by using the repeated small steps. And it doesn't have to be that way, and there's probably other ways of organizing. It's just a way that seems, if you're looking at the software analogy, seems to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Melanie, should we go to Bruno?
Hey, yeah, great presentation, John, and thanks, Brian and Travis, for that as well. Yeah, we are at Empower, so I'm with a project here on Cardano. We use sprints and agile and all of these terms which are kind of unfamiliar to me before I joined the development team in their calls and stuff. And yeah, I think it's a very useful tool for them to really structure what they're doing, and it's not like you had in your thing. It's not chaos, right? People aren't just doing their own thing, and yeah, it really creates that order of, okay, every 2 weeks we're gonna create, we have a backlog and all of these things that we go over, and we can like manage all of the tasks that we need and align that with the project management. So, and I think this concept that you're bringing it out to the wider organizations, right? So it's not just for the development teams, and it's for the whole project. The marketing team can even have sprints where they say, in this 2-week period, we're gonna focus on one aspect, and then we're going to really push for this, and then the next 2 weeks we can review that, see how it went. I feel like that could work for every aspect of the business. And here at C4C, when we're getting in new projects every week, right? Every week there's a new person, new project coming in saying, I've got this cool concept, and I'm new to Cardano, or something like this. It would be really good to have sprints where we can actually look at how we address these people coming in, how we've addressed them in the past, firstly, because we can review how effective that's been, how ineffective it's been, and then, like you said, probe that and say, okay, maybe we can introduce people to some of these other mechanisms within Cardano that they can use, rather than just being a catalyst-centered organization, being an organization that can kind of branch out and explore these different areas. So yeah, not really a question from me, but just like a general comment. And thanks, Nori, for dropping like the agile stuff in the chat. I think it'll be good for some people to kind of understand that concept. Took me a couple weeks for me to fully grasp, what we were doing in agile sprints, and now I can definitely support it, and I think it's a great idea to bring it out to the further DAO ecosystem. So yeah, thanks for that.
Travis, Brian, any reflections about that before we go on to Raido?
After Raido, and can let us know if we're saying that right.
Yeah, it's Raido, actually. So I wanted to ask, let's say if you're gonna have these probes, do you weight them as well to see, find out what probe should you kind of focus on? Let's say if you have some kind of system, and then you come out with 10 different probes, and you weight them. And let's say you have a team 4 individuals, and each one of them weights them. And then you calculate them weights, and then you're gonna come up with what's the best probe to work on it. Do you do something like that as well?
I can imagine that could be some of the thinking that you do in your reflection time in the cycle. And that there may be a backlog, as was just mentioned, of things to accomplish, and everybody agree that, hey, this is where we need to focus, and let's pick these 3. If everybody consents to that, fine. If somebody spontaneously comes up with a new one, you look at that, the next time you get together. What you're saying sounds suspiciously logical and reasonable, and that's not necessarily what works. So I don't know that I have any recommendations as to do specific weighting or whatever. It's certainly a line of thinking that might be very useful when you're reflecting.
No, because in there's one term in growth hacking, and it's marketing strategy where you kind of like, you come up with the 30 different ideas how to grow a company or marketing, and then you weight them and you try to come up with the one idea that you're going to focus, and then you test and you do a really small test, and based on the KPI you'll see if there's point of going further with this test and scale it, or you're going to take the next most strongest idea on a line, and then you go around and around and you keep finding these different ideas, and you can even test like 30 different ideas in 1 month.
Mm-hmm. It's possible. I can imagine that you might say, hey, there's 3 different probes we can do simultaneously, and then we'll see what we learn from that. So it may be that it makes a good sense to just focus on one thing, or maybe not. And I can't, so, so I can't say that one's better than the other.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, like, imagine if you do like small test and you come up with the KPI and you're realizing, yeah, that's not the KPI we are looking to get from our like project. And then you go back to the first one, and then you try another small test. You take the next probe and you try this small test as well and think, is that the KPI that I'm actually looking for? And if this is good, then focus on it longer term.
Right. If you can find some concepts or theories that will help you with that keeps you out of just blindly trying things. Mm-hmm. It may be able to, the theory may be able to focus what you're doing. And so that can be very helpful. And that way of proceeding, we'll do one, maybe your best way to go, and maybe not. I think that in itself is a question. That's a deciding how we decide question.
Okay.
I've got an example that might be applicable here, and it might be relevant to know that it came out of
Uh-oh, you're breaking up, Travis. Travis, can you put it in the chat?
Actually trying to apply.
Are you able to put it in the chat, Travis?
Oh yeah.
It looks like Travis isn't going to be able to be unfrozen. Melanie and Nori, I want to check back with you. We've got 10 minutes before the top of the hour, and we might want to do some organizing.
I just put it in the chat. What mini probes do we want to do as an experiment right now? In a half-hour at the breakout rooms. What are the ideas? What's coming up for everybody? Nori, that's.
I'm curious to know what you and Nori mentioned in your previous meeting with John, because I feel like those were probably high-hitting things, and we can, see if that resonates with people in the room. I don't know. I feel like it will.
And perhaps we should record the ideas in the chat. I'm not sure where you want to record them, Melanie.
Yeah, let's do the ideas in the chat, and maybe Nori, do you want to answer Bruno's?
Sure. We talked a little bit about the Catalyst Circle, since John was there at the beginning with Governance Alive, forming that thing up, and how it evolved and where it went as a topic. And I think that goes more towards community governance and the community being able to make decisions within Catalyst. The other topic was on, it was also Catalyst related, but it was around funding and downvoting and the results of that upon the impact community this round. And that was a topic that I think hit home for a lot of people. And there were lots of ideas of how do we respond to that as a community. And yeah, I think the other one was just around the, I think Newman has it here, DAO structure or self-management kind of stuff is kind of how do we organize and what do we want to do in this community? And I know we have a lot of Little Fish people here as well, and this directly applies to like the organization labs kind of idea. So that might be a good topic, breakout room probe, possibly combining the two communities to really look at how do we organize, because I think we're very closely aligned in those kind of desires.
And John's on the phone right now, so I'm just gonna fill in real quick.
Sorry,
go
Melanie,
ahead, Bruno, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to bring up quickly, like a couple of tools we use for our like internal development at Empower. Yeah, they're super useful in terms of like retrospectives. So in our retrospective, we have a couple of different applications and websites we use that allow us to kind of anonymously put ideas down, and this kind of removes maybe any, if people are scared to bring ideas forward or scared to say stuff, let's say someone thinks Newman is a bad host, which I'm sure no one does, but they'd probably be as
I don't think so.
No one does, but they might be afraid to say that, right? And they would want to put that anonymously, and they don't want to have potentially a conflict. And things like this where people might want to be anonymous, they don't want to say like, oh, we're doing everything wrong. People don't want to say that out loud. Like we've had this in our company where people will put stuff down and then no one will come forward to address it, but it would have actually some upvotes because we'd have like an anonymous vote as well to say, let's look at all of these answers and see which ones we resonate with as well. And it's actually something we all agreed with in the end. So that person didn't feel that they were kind of being snide, or they were like the only one in the community with this idea. So something like these applications could really benefit us here. I mean, I think it's fine that we're doing it in the chat, but just thinking going forward, I'll try and get these websites and stuff, because I feel like they could add another layer of impact in how we actually address these things, right? If more people come forward with ideas and stuff, that would be helpful.
Melanie, real quick, I'm back online. I can be here for a few more minutes. The one that really interested me is the question: can we take some of these proposals that were prepared and find a foundation to fund them? That to me is like a really interesting question.
Absolutely.
And even
it's been work that's
on Cardano that funding as well. Yeah, go ahead, Melanie. Just a quick point, as not just foundation, right? There's many projects on Cardano that have received funding. Yeah, maybe willing to help a certain project in their area, right? But yeah, Melanie, go shoot your point. I've been unsure.
No, it's absolutely crucial, because we can go and keep this feeding this cycle over and over and over again, or we can start looking at what we've already done, figure out how we're going to use it, take the stuff that works. The competing for resources, in my opinion, does not work. Writing multiple proposals that say the same thing in multiple challenges, in my opinion, does not work. Maybe we do need to shift our energy elsewhere. And like it was said last week, we've been catalyzed. We've been, the spark has been made, and we can either keep throwing matches in the fireplace, or we can add other fuel to figure out what our actual purpose is as a community, as impact, and move on from there. Come out of that, challenge our assumptions that this is what we're supposed to be doing, and start, maybe we need to create some chaos and explore some other ideas. So hopefully we can start at this in the next little bit. John, over to you.
Thank you. That was my sister calling. She's at the airport, or she's at the gate, and I said I would be there soon. So I should probably, as we had discussed, be bowing out about now.
Thank you, John. Links to you. We want to, I sent them in the meetup. Governance Alive. How do people connect with you, and how do we move forward with this real quick?
Send me messages in two ways, actually. One would be LinkedIn, and I think that's at John A. Buck.
I'll send the links after. Don't worry.
Okay, but send also my email link, because sometimes I read one thing and sometimes I read the other. And with the caveat that if you can't get hold of me and you want to, then bug Melanie. She knows how to.
I can find him.
Melanie knows how to, pull me out of whatever rabbit hole I'm in.
And
Perfect.
Bryan and Travis too would be great to have.
Yes.
Yeah. Here's Travis's.
And if we could continue this next week somehow, this idea, we'll figure that out as we go. Go get your sister. And
Okay.
John Buck, I just have to say thank you so much. I don't know if the community understands how important you are, how busy you are. That I think with your slides, it shows the influence that you have over massive areas. And for you to focus a little bit of time and attention on us, I am very, very grateful. And I hope, yeah, I think that's going to be what the rest say. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see.
And Melanie, I'm so impressed with your leadership and Nori's leadership. It's like amazing, and I hope everybody appreciates that.
We'll fill in the details as you take off on that one. That little mystery, that little drop. Okay, thank you, John.
Let's get back together and manage this. One suggestion in the breakout rooms is that the breakout rooms end up with a specific person guiding the sprint and specific action items for everybody and specifics, like really specific, and then we have something to get back together and look at.
Perfect.
So that's really critical to get that really clearly written down. And
John's given us homework. We can do this, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, John.
My pleasure. Great to see everybody. Go for it.
Right. Thanks very much.
So for those of you that don't know this and why John Buck is so important is Nori and I ended up in the ADA holder, what was it, group to select the ADA holder rep for the first circle. And John Buck took us through, there was a group of us, 10 I think we started out with, a few of us kind of moved up. And John handed over the facilitation of these meetings to each one of us at different times. And I'm a very extreme introvert, and he helped guide me through working through this process. And here, Cardano4Climate exists, I believe, because of John's influence. So it may feel like what we do doesn't really matter, or that it's small, or that we're not doing a lot of stuff, but what happens in a year from now, how is that going to be different? So I'm so thankful that John's come back and willing to help us out. Nori, you go ahead.
Yeah, it was a very interesting start to the Catalyst Circle. John did a random who wants to participate. They got a bunch of people interested. They randomly picked 10 people, Melanie and myself, and one other person actually from BC got selected. And then there were people all around the world, but it was kind of cool that 3 of us were geographically close. And through that group, I think, like Melanie said, Cardano4Climate was born because we were learning these tools, and this John's philosophy on sociocracy and all that was just kind of really great as facilitation training and consensus or consent mechanisms and things like that. So that was kind of my start as well into really looking at facilitation as kind of a tool and something that I really enjoyed doing.
Okay, so we have a task. Newman, you've got.
Well, I was just going to say that
top
the
of the
breakout
hour.
rooms. Well, yeah, that is the top of the hour. I'm mindful of the time. I'd like to get into breakout rooms because look at all these beautiful people, and I would love to talk. I like to talk, and I want to talk to you in in a smaller group. How can we break up the breakout room?
So we've got potential of 5 topics and 4 people each. Do we have topics? Newman, have you seen some stuff in the chat? I would actually like to talk about impact at Cardano Summit, where we go from there.
Okay. Let's put down that one as the first one, impact at Cardano Summit.
What else? What else is burning for you?
I really want to figure out how this goes. So I suggest we do one on like how to figure this out. Like it's not entirely clear how to run agile sprints in this environment. So let's do one for that one.
Okay. Let's do a probe for agile in a non-software context.
And then whoever's in there needs to record so that we can get that information for the rest of us. It can't split into 5 different places. Okay.
Okay, so I got it in.
2. Who else? Is that it?
You know, I love this idea. It's just sort of at the top of my head, but the idea of facilitation as the sort of rubber meets the road with an organizational mindset or framework. You know, so the concept of facilitation as an organizational model or essential to the organizational model.
Okay, there's our third topic.
Yeah.
Facilitation. So the other thing is about these breakout rooms. When we first started breakout rooms in town hall a while ago, it was Kiko Chat came in, Francois said us, this is a safe and lively environment to explore the highest in human collaboration. Feel free to jump from one chat or one breakout room to the other. You're not stuck. It's not rude to leave. Number one. So just jump around if you want to, if it's not the group you need to be. If you need to start up another one, let's do 2 rooms that are open in case there's some other discussion that comes out of this. And then if nobody shows up in a room, move to another one, okay? Juan, do you have something? It just feels like you might. And thank you, Isabella, for coming.
We could just leave an open room, a miscellaneous room.
Just a sec.
For
Just let's, you know what, the other thing in about facilitation, we often don't give enough time for introverts. You know, just that silence, it feels really nerve-wracking. So I'm going to just give maybe 15 more seconds for introverts to speak up. Well, maybe longer. And there's also the chat. Okay. Do we need any more time? Okay, let's do it. So breakout rooms are set up, Newman?
Yep, they are impact for Cardano Summit, agile and non-software context, facilitation role and org change, miscellaneous, the free and open room, open and free room.
And
There's
I
one
wanted
in
to
the
say
chat
for
there about alternative funding mechanisms to Catalyst. Can we put that one on as well?
Sure enough.
Say that again, Vanessa.
There's one that Bruno's put in the chat, and I was just saying, could we add that one in as well?
Yeah, yeah.
I want to be in multiple. How do I do that?
So free,
Other
it's
chat, can you
free to
click on
jump
it?
around, free to jump around.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
jump around and see, and then they will be, please, hosts, whoever's there, record, and we'll upload it all in one. So alternative funding from Catalyst. Excellent.
Unfortunately, I don't know how to add one. I think I have to close them all down. Maybe we
Yeah, you
use
do.
that one. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, do you have 2 extra spares?
I didn't do that. I will learn to do that in the future. How about let's that'll be the first topic in the miscellaneous free and open. How about
Okay.
or
Yeah, let's do it. Miscellaneous is actually now alternative funding from Catalyst. That's what we needed. So, and here comes Yorm. Before we break out, Yorm's just arrived. He just pulled up into the parking lot. Hang on. He's at a bridge builder meeting, and I've asked him to come along and just share real quick if he has a chance. Yorm, you want to say something real quick? We're about to jump into breakout rooms. You got 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm in a climate-related conference here in Geneva between the impact world and the finance world. Very interesting. I sent you some things to the group. I actually now just participated in a session of Celo to hear what other chains are doing about impact as well, and how we can connect also to other initiatives of other blockchain. It was very interesting. I connected with their team around the climate change as well. So that's interesting. We organized here yesterday for the Cardano Foundation. Cardano4Climate was very active in that to organize a big session here. It was full house, 70 people. Cardashift came, World Mobile, speaking about a lot about impact and getting a lot of interest. And we also had today a session with the Cardano Foundation and microfinance leaders, a small one. So a lot of action here. Yeah, and I have my tag is, I don't know if you can see, but it's Yoram with Cardano4Climate, representing all of you guys here and collecting information and feedback for all of us. Yeah, so that's one thing on that. Another thing I would like to just ask or share with everyone, I mean, we have, I don't know, a few more days, but for this Cardano Summit that is coming soon, please recommend people you know, organization you know within the community that you want them to be speakers. So, you know, whoever you think, I think it's important that we will have impact-driven speakers there. So that's important. Little Fish can be obviously one to recommend. I recommended also Scott, which I work closely as a speaker, but feel to recommend who you think is the right person, and so on. Yeah, thank you all for that.
Thanks. We'll drop that link in again. Thanks for the reminder, Yorm. Thanks for being there. Thanks for being us there.
Representing us and those impact goals and challenges. That's
perfect.
Yep.
So one thing we can do instead of, let's leave the miscellaneous breakout room as miscellaneous. We'll leave the main room for financing. Because we can always come back to this one. So we've actually got 6 rooms now. So please feel free to jump in wherever you like. The breakout rooms are open now.
All right.
Okay.
I just want to say like, if someone is new here, I know Layli is new. So on the bottom here on the dashboard, you can find the breakup room. And if you click this, it opens up different breakup room, and then you can choose one of them, and then you can jump in and out if you want.
Perfect. And if you get lost, I'm going to hang out till everybody's found their way. Yeah. I'll hang out in the main room as well. So righto, thank you for that reminder. And normally in our meetups, so go find your rooms. I'm going to just talk to people that.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, we got the recording going.
Nice. Let's talk about what we're going to do. We're going to figure out how to run sprints to organize DAOs.
I think that's
software context.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's a great way to start it up.
Oh.
Yeah. Because there's a lot.
There's a lot specific action items.
Yeah, there's a lot of little different things inside of that that software development model that really are good to bring to a non-software context. But then there's some things that we don't want, that don't sort of fit, you know. The gang. But I am going to pop off. I just wanted to get my face on the recording, maybe. Yep. Hey, everybody. You guys are my favorite people, and Rido, thanks for the reminder about the new people. And that's one of the things about the sprint model, is that it just lasts for a little bit, and then you got the chance again to sort of reflect and onboard. So there's this weird thing about reflection and onboarding. But I'm butterflying out. We'll see you guys. Thanks.
See ya.
Thanks.
Oh, Nori, I'm so happy you're here.
Okay, this is the room for facilitation and organizational change. Here I am recording, but I'm just in the room by myself, but you might be listening to me in the future. I think I'm going to pause the recording until anybody comes in, and maybe I'll record some thoughts about facilitation as an avenue for organizational change.